someone who's never heard of internal family systems before, what is it? Why should we care about this?
Internal family system is a way to see the human mind in terms of different parts. We have different protectors that are kind of the guard. These protectors don't want the more vulnerable and young part beneath to be triggered or to be hurt or to be harmed. So the protectors are always on their guard, going, is this a dangerous situation? Is this a dangerous person? Exactly. The goal of IFS is to live from the place of self, so being self-led, which is one of the 4 pillars of IFS. To be, if you see it as a bus, and you have all of these different parts, you have 20, 30 people, some people have hundreds of parts in this bus. They're all shouting, they're all saying, I want to go this way, I want to go this way, oh, we need to go there, oh, we need to stop right now.
You mentioned that you have led men's groups. And what is the purpose of a men's group?
I held men's group in the beginning of my IFS career, kind of like therapy session. The purpose was mostly to let all of ourselves come out and connect with all of who we are, to increase this repertoire of how much do I feel comfortable doing and being. For example, a lot of men have difficulties expressing anger, and that's something we would do. We would intentionally look each other in the eyes, feel the anger in our bodies, and just show it to the other person as much as we wanted to and as much as the other person could take. And we would just do this with each other. But rather just turn to the self and get everything the part needs from the self, instead of my partner needs to meet my need. And there comes also often manipulation. My partner doesn't do what I want, and then I don't like that feeling, so I need them to change.
Daniel, the reason I wanted to talk with you today is because I'm really interested in how we can design our lives, live on purpose instead of like getting stuck in the 9-to-5 grind. You know what I'm talking about, yeah?
Yeah.
And I'm curious how your work with internal family systems connects to that. So how can understanding ourselves on a deeper level help us create real freedom, like both emotionally, physically, maybe even financially? I don't know. I know too little about this, but I'm really intrigued about the work that you do. So for someone like me who's never heard of internal family systems before, what is it and why should we care about this?
Yeah. So internal family system is a way to see the human mind in terms of different parts. So the way we see it, we have different protectors that are kind of the guards. And these protectors don't want the more vulnerable and young parts beneath to be triggered or to be hurt or to be harmed. So the protectors are almost always on their guard, going, is this a dangerous situation? Is this a dangerous person? Are we getting too open right now? Should we close down? You know, all of these things just to keep the more, what we call exiles, the more vulnerable parts underneath, safe. And then we have something that's called the self, which is called different things in different traditions. Some call it the source, or God, or anything that's like something really, really big and spacious. And the self is this loving part that we see as our essence in IFS. And yeah, the impact of IFS is that when we can tap into being in the self, when I don't have to be led by all of these protectors that are always seeing danger, always scanning for danger, always thinking, always worrying, but the self can come in instead, then these protectors soften and they relax. And it also opens up for the for more vulnerability then, because the exiles, the more vulnerable parts, can now be shown and they can now be connected with. You know, I can share when I feel nervous, or I can show when I feel nervous, instead of this protector coming in and going, no, we have to hide that. We have to put the stone face on and we have to look really confident right now. So more authenticity can come in, which can really deepen connection with other people and with oneself. And just the bliss of living from a place of self, instead of always having worries and fears and living from protectors that are keeping other people away. So I think that's why we should care about it.
And I would love to dive deeper on. You said like exiles. Can you explain that further? And now you also spoke about the self, like the God state or God mode or the source. Like there's all these different traditions of explaining it. So is it the goal to like live like more during your waking hours in that self, that higher self state?
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
And, and could you explain the exiles?
yeah. So exactly, the goal of IFS is to live from what we call the place of self, so being self-led, which is
Mhm.
one of the four pillars of IFS. To be, if you see it as a bus, and you have all of these different parts, you have 20, 30 people, some people have hundreds of parts in this bus. And then they're all shouting, they're all saying, I want to go this way, I want to go this way, oh, we need to go there, or we need to stop right now. We want the self to sit in the driver's seat. We want the self to hear all of these parts and to take in all of these requests of the different parts, the wishes, the desires, the boundaries. The self hears all of that and it makes the decision based on that, so that the parts don't take over and you burst out in anger, or you just isolate yourself for a week, or anything that can be detrimental to your life. So yeah, the goal of IFS is to live from the place of self. And exiles are, they're created usually in the childhood, and they're usually very young parts. So a classic example of when an exile is created is the parents don't meet the child's needs. So it doesn't need to be something traumatic. It can just be, you know, the child wants an ice cream and doesn't get an ice cream and then feels really sad about that. But the more life, the more, you could say, the ones that affect life negatively usually come from traumas. And those are the ones that we're really concerned with and really want to work with in IFS. So it's a young part. And I should also explain what a part is now, so that
Yeah.
becomes clear. A part is like a person, you could say. It has its own desires, um, thoughts, feelings, needs. It's really like a sub-person in me, like the part that wants to be perfect. It goes, I need to be perfect or else I'm gonna fail and everyone's gonna laugh at me. And, you know, it has its desires and needs and so on. And then we have inner children that are usually very vulnerable, as I was sharing about exiles. And we have the inner critic, for example, that I think many people know of, that goes, you know, you're not good enough, you need to do better, and it usually feels a lot of fear. So that could be seen as another part. and there are countless different parts. I have my inner coach. I have my inner, the part that wants justice, and so many different parts. So this is what I would say is parts. And exiles in specific, they carry heavy emotions, usually from the childhood, and they're usually very young parts.
Yeah, I got it. And I want to be like really specific. So anyone listening, but also like for my own sake, what issues do I often experience in order to get benefit from IFS coaching or IFS therapy?
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
So what type of issues do you solve for people?
yeah.
Who is like your typical client?
So I personally work a lot with trauma, self-love, and coming in contact with the emotions. So that's my niche. Um,
Is that the same as emotional maturity, or is it
it
like
could be,
getting in?
could
Yeah.
be the same. Yeah, being able to connect with the emotions, being able to express one's emotions, be authentic, and yeah, just acceptance for what I'm going through right now, mainly. But then IFS can be used for pretty much any kind of issue or challenge that people have. So it can also be used for depression. Which part of you is depressed, and what does that part of you need to feel better? Or anxiety, which part is it that keeps on thinking about this problem all the time, and how can we support that part from a place of self? So it can really be used for anything. But I see it as the core of IFS is to offer love to the different parts. So it feels natural for me to work with self-love. And it's also very effective at working with trauma and going back to the trauma um, without having to relive the trauma, but still being able to process it and heal it. Um, and it's also a lot about coming back to the body and to the feelings of being here right now. So, in that way, working with emotions and connecting with emotions also feels very natural.
Uh, where did your interest in this come from?
So, the first session I got from a person who gave free sessions. So, I didn't even know what it was. I just thought it
You were
sounded.
just like curious, or were you into the self-help space? Or I've also like heard you when we met at Ängsbacket that you were studying psychology,
Mhm.
and so where did that interest come from? So like
So,
not
yeah,
anybody goes to a coaching session.
my interest for personal development started many years
Yeah.
ago. I had a quite big depression when I was 18. I was just in this phase of playing computer games 12 hours a day, my whole waking time,
Wow.
addicted to drugs. I was not being treated well by my friends. Woke up 3 p.m. I had no vision for my life, no job. I was just living in my father's basement and didn't want to live anymore. And from that place, I started working at a company that was really scary because my job was to go up to every stranger that I met and to get them to donate money to charity organizations.
All right.
And for me, who was just in front of a computer all day, to go out there and to go up to people and say, we need you to donate money here, so come and sign up here. It was terrifying. And besides, we were also traveling all around Sweden. So we weren't even at one place. It was just very challenging, very scary. And naturally, they also taught us about affirmations and about meditation and think positively. Just this concept of you're not a slave to your situation, but by shifting how you think and shifting how you move and what you do, you can actually take control of your life. I didn't think so. I hadn't thought so before. I just thought I might as well just sit and play computer, because what's it going to help if I go out and challenge myself and push myself? I'm not going to change anything.
Did you learn these principles at this new job, or where did you pick those up
So I got interested in personal development at that job.
at that job? All
Yeah.
right.
And then the principle of IFS I learned when, so this event kind of sowed the seed. And then a few years ago, I got a free session from a person who was offering IFS coaching. And I've gone to that person weekly ever since. And that's where I've
Wow.
picked up on those methods and ways to work. And I was very skeptical in the beginning, actually, not really believing in this speak to your different parts. I don't have parts, I'm just one being, I thought. But the more I've gotten into IFS, the more I see that we have often conflicts between different parts. You're on a roller coaster, and one part feels excited and another part feels terrified. And procrastination is another good example. One part really wants to get the work done. Another part says, I think we should wait until tomorrow instead. So in many cases, we feel this ambivalence, and we have different parts that want different things for us. So this framework really works as a way to see life. And it has a bunch of other benefits too. Like if I would tell you that I'm angry at you, Morgan, or if I would instead say a part of me feels angry at you, there's such a big shift.
Yeah, big difference
Yeah,
for both of us, I think.
yeah, for me too.
Yeah.
Exactly, because now I can hold that part that was angry instead of I'm angry, so there's really nothing I can do. Yeah.
So you went to this coaching and you started to realize that you had these different parts. Did you have also like a big breakthrough moment, like during these coaching sessions, when you realize, okay, this really worked, or this shifted my life towards this, or that something big, huge happened to you?
Yeah, there were two events, I would say, that were impactful. The first one was during our first session when we were talking to my inner gamer, who was still active at that time as well. Uh, and
Inner gamer, I love
yeah,
that.
inner everything.
Yeah, yeah.
So he was speaking to my inner gamer, and I noticed how it felt so scared that it, he's gonna be changed, and he's not good enough. Because my whole life I've been shaming him, been saying how you can't play this much, it's not good, you're escaping from life. So to show this part to him, to my coach, was really scary. And I remember the coach asking if he can ask a question to my inner gamer. And I go check in with him, and I say, yeah, quite scared and quite open. And he says the most beautiful thing. He says, I'm not going to change you, and I'm not going to fix you. And that's all he said. And this part of me just could feel his authenticity, could feel that he actually meant that. And it got so open and so relaxed and felt so safe to really open up more And from that point on, we could just work with that part in a much more deep and authentic way. So that was very meaningful. And then,
How did that? Sorry for getting in a
go ahead.
question here. So, how did that affect your gaming afterwards? How did that affect your behaviors from that session?
Yeah. So we didn't work that much more with the inner gamer. We just went for like 3 sessions or so. And I did notice that it became a bit less, because this part, the needs that this part had, could be met in a different way than through gaming. They could be met by being heard, being validated, being seen, receiving love from me. Because I think ultimately all parts just want to feel love in the end. And they do a bunch of things to feel love or to distract from the feeling of not feeling loved.
Wow.
So by just giving them love, why would you game? Why would you drink alcohol? What hole is there to fill, really? So it was powerful. And then the other part of me that I worked with was a very insecure part that's been with me my whole life, also because of this background that I shared with you. And this has been a huge shift, because we've worked with that for quite some time, and just giving this love to the part that feels worthless and that doesn't feel that he deserves love. In the beginning it can be hard, and it was hard for me too, that this part was not really receiving it. It wasn't feeling worthy of it. It was just deflecting and saying, no, I don't want this, I can't have this. So we work with patience. We work with just being there, this loving self with that part, and just give it time. If it doesn't want to receive love, that's fine. But I'm here as an infinite source of love, as this fountain of love that's just there and just radiating without effort, because it's the essence of who we are, the self. And the part can receive love in its own time, if it even wants to. So this is what we did, and it took some time, and it was not really receiving in the beginning, but in the end it could just soak up all the love that was being sent. And of course I still have that insecure part. We don't get rid of parts, and that's not the goal either. But whenever that happens, he can turn to me instead of having to react outward and change the world in some way. So that's been a huge shift.
Wow.
Hmm.
And I'm also getting curious about like being that source of like an abundance of love. Did you mean that that is the role of the therapist or the coach?
Good question. Yeah. So the self, which every person has, that is at the essence love, compassion. There are 8 C's that describe it: compassion, courage, confidence, creativity, clarity, and so on, and 5 P's as well. So it has a lot of different characteristics, and the goal is to find it within the client themselves. So if you're the client, I would help you access that part of you and then meet your parts with that love. But sometimes it can be very difficult for the client to access that. Maybe they're overwhelmed, or they are what we call blended. They feel like a part has taken over and they are this one part. In which case, me as a coach, myself, I can tap into myself and to have myself anchor you and to be the acceptance and the love that your parts might need. So that's a different way to do it, that I as a coach tap into myself, but ultimately the goal is for the client to tap into theirs.
Because I guess that people never, like most people, might never feel that connection to their true self, to their essence, to their, because like we are just so bombarded with stimulation, with social media, with food addictions and pornography, and like from childhood, we have like iPads for 1 year olds or even younger. So we are constantly having our focus turned outwards instead of inwards, like being connected. Because I've only experienced something that is resembling what you're talking about when you're talking about the self, when I've been in like deep meditation, or I've been doing like deep therapy work, or I've been like focused more on myself. I never felt that when I'm like scrolling on Instagram or editing a video, or I feel that creative self when I'm editing and doing like that graphic work when I'm creating.
Yeah.
But do you know what I'm getting at? That people might not even have that anchor. So how do you get them to even just connect with that part?
Yeah.
That is, I also believe that everybody has that part within them, but
Yeah, and I
not
agree
everybody
with you as
have had
well.
a relationship with that self.
Yeah, I agree that by turning outwards all the time, it becomes a distraction from the connection inwards, and then we don't tap into the self. And many people do that because they feel an emotion that they don't want to feel. And what's easiest there? Of course, the easiest thing is to go buy alcohol and drink alcohol, or pick up the phone and scroll on the phone. It's so easy and it's such a quick fix. And it does work in the short run, but in the long run, it just sets you up for addiction and for misery and for loneliness, and yeah, just really not good for life. So what we do as a first step is to turn inwards, as you're saying, and slowing down, just taking a few breaths, connecting to whatever part that's there. And you might notice, I don't know, an insecure part or a happy part or any kind of part. And if the part needs our attention, then we just feel that part for a while. And that's a really good first step to build contact with the part, and also to slow down and to ground ourselves. And then from there, when we feel the part, we automatically realize that, or often we realize that I am not that part, because I can observe that part. And there we get some more self energy. So I get more into the self. And from there are also a few other tools that I often use to support the client into the self. I wouldn't recommend doing it alone. I would recommend doing it with a coach, because it can be a bit overwhelming, especially if you're new to IFS. But I would, if there is a part that's, let's say I feel insecure, I would ask, okay, how does the client feel towards their insecurity? If they feel love towards the insecurity, if they feel compassion, amazing, they're in the self. The work is done pretty much. And then just flow from there and meet the part, you know. But if they feel a resistance, which is really common, I don't like this part of me, then we turn to that part instead. It becomes quite meta here, but
Yeah.
the part that is having a resistance, we go, okay, How do I feel towards the part that has a resistance? I accept that part. And there we have some self. So we can go
Yeah.
up layer by layer by layer until we find the self and connect with the self. But as you're saying, also meditation is a great way to tap into the self, breath work, anything that gets you to slow down and to connect inwards can really support that.
I have a guess here, and I want to hear your thoughts about it. So, you've coached, I don't know how many people, but a bunch of people. And when, if they are newly introduced to this idea that the part of them there that is self-sabotaging or that is having that issue, as soon as you are presenting the idea that this is not you, Daniel, this is not you, Morgan, this is a part of you, but you're fine, or you're like, you are not identifying your whole being, because maybe the majority is maybe, okay, I am my name and I am my work and I'm identified as like just like this one moving part,
Mm-hmm.
this flesh suit. And as soon as you introduce that, okay, this is a part and we can dissociate from this part and have a look at it, that major benefits happen, or major acceptance happen quite quickly.
Yeah.
Is that a, could that be an accurate guess? Because
Yeah, I mean,
what I pull out from your work is that there's a layer of acceptance going on.
mhm. I would say a great example, and yeah, I agree. Just that shift itself is huge.
Yeah, you've seen that.
Yeah, I mean, I see it often with anger.
Mm.
If a person is angry and kind of becomes their anger, is blended with their anger, has no distance to it, then a lot of horrible things can happen. So, and I also hold some workshops on anger occasionally, where I emphasize that anger itself isn't bad, but it's our relationship with it. It's our, we lose ourselves in the anger, and that is the problem. If I'm furious right now and I can hold that angry part, I can be with that angry part, I can notice the sensations in my body, then I can also choose what to say, what to do. I'm still in control, instead of the anger coming in, taking over, and just fucking things up for me.
Yeah. It often does. If you just let
Yeah,
it run the bus, as you said.
yeah, and that's just one of many parts that could run the show and take over. There are parts that shut down emotionally. There are parts that create a lot of anxiety, parts that don't want to socialize and want to be alone. But there's another part that really wants to socialize. So a lot of different parts. And if we can have that, we observe them. What we usually say in IFS is speak for the part rather than from the part. So I would say to you, my insecure part feels this, rather than it completely coming up and becoming me, and I have no distance to it at all. So speaking for the part instead of from the part is is a huge part of IFS.
Yeah, I can really see it working. But I'm also like listening from like different lenses of other therapy forms, but I can really like see how this uh, this acceptance, this dissociation from the issues as well, and not like being completely absorbed in the anger or the inner gamer or the inner depressed dude that is just like sitting at home at father's basement or whatever he's
Mm-hmm.
doing. I can really see this working. And I'm wondering, what are the most common parts you see in men? Do you see like like a slight or a huge difference between like men and women? Is there any like more common parts you see in men that are bigger and are taking like more place, specifically in men compared to women?
Mm. Yeah, men. Um, yeah, I would say men often vulnerable feelings seem to be um, less shown. So the sad part or the insecure part or parts that are vulnerable that could be hurt tend to be more hidden in men. Whereas women are much better at showing that and connecting to that part. And I'm not blaming men for it, I'm blaming society for it. But that's something that I do see. The unwillingness to show vulnerability.
Yeah, someone listening right now that's a man is like, okay, but why should I show sadness? Why should I show myself vulnerable? Because I always get damaged, I get hurt, I get ridiculed, I
Mm,
get laughed at when I'm showing myself vulnerable.
mm,
And this is also like a struggle I've been like dealing with for many, 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 many years because it
mm,
has not been safe
mm.
to show sadness, to show emotions, to show that you are scared or show that you are vulnerable in a certain situation because like physically it feels like a life or death situation.
Yeah,
But I wasn't aware of the different parts.
yeah,
But what issues do you see for men not being able to access sadness and being vulnerable? What are the issues
yeah.
that comes from that?
Well, I first want to answer that about some men don't find it safe and they get
Okay.
ridiculed because I really think that's valid. And if it's not welcome, if you show your vulnerable side and people laugh at you or ridicule you, then that's not the setting to do it in. So I would invite those men to change environment and change setting so that they can find a place and a setting where it's met with as much self as possible, met with acceptance, met with, you're welcome to be sad in this space. I'm not gonna laugh at you. I'm not gonna change you. Your sadness is beautiful and thank you for expressing it. So that's an important shift to make so that you don't keep being authentic in places where you get punished for it because it can just be re-traumatizing.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, and the risk of just keeping the vulnerable parts hidden, exiling them. Wow, I mean, where to start?
Okay. Well, like I have nothing going on for today, so
Great. I think it's
I'm
an
happy to go there.
Yeah, great. I think it's a really important topic too, so I want to touch on it and go into it. First of all, we see it as trauma being stored in the body. So these many of the sad parts are carrying trauma or very heavy experiences. And if we don't go there and join them and just hold them, then that part is it's gonna be tension in that part of the body for the rest of your life. And not just stuck, like it can be tension, it can be pain, it can be stiffness in the body. And we really need to go there to support the part to let go of that if we want to be able to relax more and to live a better life. So that's a major reason why, because trauma is stored in the body. Second reason is these inner children that are carrying those heavy emotions, those vulnerable parts, you could call them, these have such potential to be joyful, colorful inner children. And they are in their essence. So if we can go there and heal the part, the inner child, then you're going to feel more creative, you're going to feel more playful, you're going to feel more happy. You're going to be more like children in many different ways, and these positive ways, you know, the aliveness, the energy level, the curiosity that they have. You know, they possess a lot of self-like or self-energy, these children. And so do your inner children. So by connecting with them and healing them, we get all of these wonderful qualities. Another thing is the protectors that we have. Why are they actually there? They're there because some part underneath is vulnerable or scared or sad. So some part underneath needs support. And by healing that part underneath that's sad, for example, then it just, the protectors can relax, the protectors can let go. And when they let go, when I no longer have this angry part lashing out all the time, or this part that's trying to isolate me, I just become more free and I can live the life that I truly want rather than to have to live from fear. And that's no small thing at all. And also to kind of tie this to what your question was about, well, why should they show their emotions? Because now I'm talking about why they should heal these parts, and it's also connected to why they should show the parts. By showing the parts, the parts can heal. If I have a vulnerable, young, insecure part, and I just push it away, what am I telling that part? I'm telling it, you're not welcome, you're not good enough. But by bringing him here in this meeting with
Yeah.
you, then I can actually show him that, you know, you're welcome and you're beautiful and I'm not ashamed of you. So that's a really powerful reason to show it, and not to even go into how deep we can connect with another person when we're actually ourselves, when we show our insecure parts, our sad parts, instead of two protectors meeting each other, which often also leads to fights in different ways. But if we can just let go and take these masks off and be as we are with each other and accept each other, which is also a big one. So not judging each other, but just accepting each other. That's where the magic and deep connection lies. So there are so many reasons to do this.
Oh, that's beautiful. And I want to also uh, like just dig a little bit deeper on the setting. So you said here about showing yourself, showing your vulnerability, or showing your sadness, and we can meet more authentically. We can meet more like deeper with the selves, connecting. And if you still don't feel safe in showing your vulnerability, maybe it's like your work environment, or you're in a relationship that the other person can't really deal with your sadness because it's really, or uh, if we just like take a situation that if you would be with a woman and she can feel you trigger her insecurity, you trigger her like she feels totally unsafe, you being vulnerable because you have always shown up as the strong masculine provider, protector, and being that like happy person, making sure everyone's safe. You are the container of life. And then not being able to have that breakdown, or where you are collapsing, or where you are like feeling sad, or you're feeling vulnerable, something happened or something from the past is boiling up within you. could you like just continue be in that setting, in that relationship, for example, and just go and have that setting, that space, that container with a therapist or with a older brother or
Mm.
with a friend or somewhere else? Because I'm not like really sure that I should be maybe vulnerable in all situations
Mm.
and with every everybody. So
Yeah,
that is something I'm just like trying to figure out.
and that's a really important question. Um, I would say it comes down to personal choice. I don't know what IFS has to say about that, but
Mm.
my choice is to be as vulnerable as I can, as authentic as I can, in every setting where I'm not being harmed as a consequence. So if I'm working at a company where there's this macho culture and you shouldn't be sad, I'm probably not going to be sad in that place because it harms me. It would harm me and my parts. In a relationship with a person who can accept my vulnerability and who can hold it, I'm practicing to be more and more vulnerable. And I think that's a really beautiful thing to do to deepen the connection with that person. Um, it's also a great thing that you're suggesting to instead go to a therapist and to just let it all out there. Some people have men's groups. I've also been in men's groups and I've held some men's groups. And that's a perfect place too for people to just meet and share their vulnerability. And especially doing it with other men really does something to the system. Um, so, whatever way works, go for it. And I also believe that sometimes people have to compensate. So if I am at this company where I just have to hold back my parts so often, then I might need some extra spaces outside of that. I might need two sessions a week with a coach, or I might need two men's groups, or a lot of different settings to really let it all out because it's building up with time. The more I'm sitting there at that fika table and I'm holding in this sad part, the more it boils and it builds. And then we just really need to let it out and to let it be welcome and accepted.
Yeah, and of course, like balance it with, is this the right job? Maybe you need to change job, but that's a whole
Yeah.
nother question. And especially nowadays when people seem to have a hard time finding jobs and you need to
Mm.
provide for yourself and all of that, so that's a
Yeah.
totally different situation. But
Yeah.
I'm really curious about, do you you mentioned that you have led men's groups, so what does these men's group contain? What do you do in a men's group, and what is the purpose of a men's group?
Hmm.
And are you incorporating some principles from IFS into when you are leading men's groups?
Hmm. Yeah. So before I held men's groups in the beginning of my IFS career, so I wasn't very familiar with it. If I was to do it today, I would definitely do that. Um, I would have us all step into the self as much as we can in the beginning of the workshop. And then, do IFS with each other. One person shows their vulnerable part and the other just is the self, kind of like a therapy session. That would be an awesome men's group, I think.
Yeah, cool.
Yeah, but also what I did during the men's groups was the purpose was mostly to let all of ourselves come out and connect with all of who we are to increase this repertoire of how much do I feel comfortable doing and being. So, for example, a lot of men have difficulties expressing anger. And that's something we would do. We would intentionally look each other in the eyes and feel the anger in our bodies and just show it to the other person as much as we wanted to and as much as the other person could take. And we would just do this with each other. I think that's really powerful, especially, well, for women as well, but also for men who um, have this image of, oh, I need to be a kind and soft man all the time and my anger isn't welcome. And a lot of people fear men's anger, right? Because some men do horrible things when they're angry. So reclaiming the ownership of anger is a big part of it, and being comfortable and confident being angry so that I can, at any time of my life, show that anger, and again, I hold it. So not letting it come up and bubble up, but holding the anger and still showing it in a controlled way. That's kind of the goal with these exercises. And then the other things we would do is we would share how we're feeling, what's happened that's been challenging, and it would just be a space where we can consciously complain about how we're feeling and get support from each other, be heard, ask for touch, anything that we might need or that our different parts might need. Those would be the core pillars of the men's circle, and lots of different things around that as well.
You mentioned touch there, and I started smiling because, like, both you and I have a heritage that is not Swedish. I'm half Egyptian, half Swedish, and what do you think about like the culture of not touching each other in this country? It's driving me insane that people are like so uncomfortable touching. And if you would go like down in Cairo, and I'm going there in a couple of days, if you would go in Cairo, you would see guys just like kissing each other on the cheeks, like fist
Oh.
bumping each other on the shoulders, like holding hands walking down the street, or like having like, arm in arm going down. Like there's
Wow.
so much more touch. Or when we speak with each other, we are holding each other's shoulders, and we are like more close than what is like socially more convenient or acceptable here in Sweden. I think like that it has a certain name where they have studied in different cultures how far away from a person should you be standing when you're speaking to somebody, when you are face to face. So in Sweden that is 70 centimeters. In Italy it's 30. So when an
Wow.
Italian is speaking to a Swedish guy, he's trying to get closer to these 30 centimeters
And he's
limit,
just
and the
backing.
Swedish guy is backing off. So the Italian is going forward, and the Swedish guy is backing off. So they're they're playing that dance,
Yeah,
and he's just like thinking he's weird,
yeah.
or both guys are thinking they're weird. So what are your thoughts about, and especially men, I think, and especially in Sweden,
Mm.
are super uncomfortable in their own skin. Like the word embodiment is being used like in especially in Ängsbacka and in different therapy settings. And could you speak around that embodiment? How would you help a person, especially a man, get more comfortable in his own skin?
Mm.
Because I'm super comfortable in my own skin. I haven't always been, but I've gotten there, and I'm like a 10 out of 10 comfortable in my own skin in new situations.
Mm.
So how would you work with a guy that is like, you know what I'm talking about? They are just like having this body transporting their head to the office, back to home. They
Mm.
are just like totally up here. They are not in the self as well, I
Yeah,
would presume.
yeah, exactly. Yeah. Um, I would say there is this simple IFS practice that anyone can do, and that's a great start on becoming more embodied and also getting a taste of IFS. And it's to notice when this part shows up, the part that brings you up into the head. the part that says, the planner or a manager, or some part that's thinking, maybe even the inner critic. So becoming aware when that happens, and then having a conversation with that part, just being curious about it. This is really the core of IFS, and this is why it's so powerful, to answer your first question, because IFS is not about fixing any part. There is no bad part. There is a whole book written on that. No bad
Yeah,
parts.
no bad parts.
Yeah. And it's really a life-changing way to see this. So I would just wrap that first part up. That's a practice that one can do, getting curious about the part without trying to fix the part itself. And when we can just realize that all parts are perfect, even that part that's wanting to commit suicide and has tried to commit suicide, that part that murdered another person, like whatever part one has, they all want to protect you. And they're all trying to protect you in the way that they think works, in the way that has worked in the past. So they're all coming with these beautiful intentions. There are a few IFS therapists who claim that some people have one bad part that's actually malevolent, but I don't believe in that. And I guess it's more of a philosophical question.
Yeah.
But just being, meeting the part from a place of, okay, this part wants what's best for me. And it's not updated. That's the real problem. It still lives in the childhood, where the inner critic was really important, because without the inner critic, I would fail, and maybe my parents would leave me because they don't want me, and then I would die. So the inner critic is really important when you're a child. And then it just keeps existing, because once in your life it did work and it did keep you safe, and it's just continuing to do what it does. So what we do in IFS is to turn to that part and go, thank you for trying to protect me, inner critic, part that murders, part that wants to commit suicide, whatever part there is. Thank you so much for your good intention. And I know that it's just about lack of knowledge. You're just not updated. You just don't know what the situation we're in today is like, because you're living in the past. So in IFS, we do what's called retrieval. We go back to that place and time where this part is, and usually the clients get visual images of a room or a place that actually happened in the past, and there they see their own part. So we go there and we connect with that part, and we update it on, bring it into some other place where it wants to be, and update it how old we are, for example. Many parts think that we're the same age that they are. Many parts think that, the client is 7 or 8. And just updating the client there and saying, you know what, I'm actually 30. That's a big shift. And the trust that the part can feel then, and oh wow, I'm actually held by an adult now. So I don't need to have an inner critic to please my parents. I can just be held by you, maybe. And yeah, the self says, I can definitely hold you. And that's the start of this new relationship. Also, where the parts aren't looking outwards for a partner to complete them, which there's also a whole book on. You're the one you've been waiting for. But rather to just turn to the self and get everything the part needs from the self, instead of my partner needs to meet my needs. And there comes also often manipulation. My partner doesn't do what I want, and then I don't like that feeling, so I need them to change. But
Yeah.
by just turning to the self as the source of love and giving love to the parts myself, there comes complete freedom from a partner wanting to give love, or a parent giving love, or anyone else giving love. And it opens up for the space to really be ourselves.
Yeah, that's like my mind is blowing a little bit. So and I was laughing a little bit there because I could remember a part of myself that made me laugh because ang- when I get not like super angry but like really frustrated, I may be like doing some handcrafting, or I can go into my garage and see it's a freaking mess, and I start like swearing as I did when I was 15.
Mm.
Like, do you have any of those part that you think like are funny now looking back at that?
Hmm. I don't think I have any part that I've noticed that does something like that in the past. But that sounds really interesting.
Yeah. Yeah, I have a part that can like get triggered and awakened, also like in if there would be a situation where like not that physical violence would be needed, but that I feel that my body is super ready for physical violence.
Hmm.
I was like, there was a lot of physical violence in the school where I grew up, and also during like every summer we went to Egypt, like every summer from I was like 0 years old, and there was like a lot of nice things, a lot of love, a lot of community, a lot of beautiful magical things, but there were also like a lot of violence.
Hmm.
So like that part can be like I have like really close access to that part.
Yeah. Sounds like it's been active a lot of times in your life, and it
Yeah.
easily gets triggered as well.
No, it's it rarely gets triggered.
Oh.
Look, I have like the patience is like crazy long.
Hmm. Okay.
Crazy like uh my limit is huge, but
Hmm.
it is a part that I carry with me. I feel it like in my presence. I can go into situations with new people, and I could like my brain just like scans quite quickly. Like if there would be a situation, I would dismantle this person this way.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I can actually relate to that as well.
Yeah.
Um, I
Can you
do.
share that?
Yeah, I do have a part that after conflicts, sometimes when I have an intense conflict, and especially when I feel like I've lost the conflict, then this part comes in, and it's recreating the scenario in a way that I win, and often it can be violent. So I imagine that I'm punching the other person in the face, and then I'm just walking away from there and I won.
Yeah.
Yeah. Or that I'm just like saying the exact right thing, the sharpest thing that really, cuts to their, like really hurts them.
Yeah.
I have a part that can do that sometimes as well. That, imagines that I say these things or do these things to win. Um, and again, there too, I've worked with OCD patients,
All
and
right. Interesting.
yeah, and for these clients, they're so afraid of these thoughts because they believe that it's going to manifest in the physical world if they think this, or at least some people with OCD have this challenge. And by simply, that's the really big difference is if the person is afraid of these thoughts and feels something's wrong with me, or if they're like, okay, that was just a thought and it's okay, I'm not going to act on it, it's welcome to be here. there is such an exhale to the last
Mm.
approach, and there is no more that even the cycle of thoughts kind of stops there. Whereas if I think that thought and then I go, fuck, what if it actually happens? I can't think that. It activates my sympathetic nervous system, and it just activates the amygdala, the fear center in the brain, and it just really makes the thoughts more frequent. And then my body reacts more strongly, and it becomes like this spiral, which sometimes creates OCD, anxiety, and different challenges.
So you could basically like cure OCD with IFS.
Yeah, some people do that, although it's not the most effective method to only use IFS. There is an IFS therapist who uses IFS and exposure with response prevention, ERP.
Mm.
And that seems to be a really, really powerful combination.
Yeah. And without naming any names, could you share like one of the most transformational, uh, like the most powerful transformation you've witnessed through IFS?
Yeah, yeah, good question. I would love to. Um, it's kind of hard to pick one, but I would like to mention this one client that I had. Um, the first, before we even had a session, I told him about IFS is about giving love to the different parts of us. And he said, I don't feel love. I've tried that already. I can't love my parts, so it's not for me. And I go, well, I'd love to try anyway, because these are the kind of situations that I'm really drawn to. Like, okay, I can't, it doesn't work. Well, let's see then.
Mm.
There's a part of me that's wanting to prove that it works, and also to see if it works or not. So we do a session, and he could feel love after the first session. The second session we had, third session, and I believe it was the fourth session when his eyes are closed and he's going inwards, and I can see he's in a deep state of love and compassion for a part that he's with. And he goes, okay, wow, Daniel, I just noticed something huge. I noticed what you mean by the self. I really, and I don't remember his exact words, but I was so touched by his deep peace and the bliss that was just radiating from him, and how he could know exactly what his parts needed. Just 5 minutes before, he was confused. What does this part need? And now he was like, okay, I know exactly. And he explained it as a connection with God. And that part was perceiving everything that it needed. So the client walked out of there, and for multiple days, he didn't even recognize himself. He was so excited and saying how, I'm so social now. I'm speaking to so many people, and I'm so comfortable in social situations, and I just want to be with others now. So his whole personality seems to have changed for, yeah, about 5 days after the session. And then after that, there was also some improvement, but it got down a bit since he didn't continuously do the IFS practice himself. But the goal is that the client does this regularly every day, in which case he might have been able to hold that self energy for a longer period of time. So that's one story. Can I share one more?
Yeah, could we just like stop at this story
Mm-hmm.
and just dig a little bit deeper so we can focus in on, so
Sure.
he was not feeling love for himself. So that little transition, how do you like work with a person that is not feeling love for the different parts, or he's a little bit hesitant to it, he has some form of resistance.
Mm.
So how do you approach that?
Mm-hmm.
That's really interesting.
Yeah, so I guess it's this quite complex thing to explain, but
Mhm.
if the client dislikes a part, then instead of turning to the part that is being disliked, we turn to the disliker. We go to
Mhm.
that part and go, so you don't like that vulnerable part, is that right? Yeah, I hate him, he's so bad, or so on. And okay, we hear this part a bit, and then see, how do I feel towards that part? I feel acceptance and I feel love. Cool. So that's where I tap into the self, right? But sometimes when I feel how I feel about that part, I think it's too much. Okay, another part, because it's not me, another part thinks this one is too much. So we turn to that part instead. And we investigate that part. Why do you think it's too much? Because just by these parts sharing their experience and their thoughts, it makes them soften. And then that space, the self can come in that space. So we would keep doing this until we notice that for this specific part, I feel love, which is kind of what we're doing in Zen coaching as well, but in a kind of different way. Or I'm not saying we, because I'm not a Zen coach, but they do
Yeah.
that. They say, can you accept what's going on?
Yeah.
No. Okay, but can you accept that you don't know, that you don't accept it? Yeah. So that's how I would get into the self.
Yeah, got it. And the other story, you
Right.
had one more
Yeah.
session, yeah?
Thank you for reminding
That
me.
you were
I'm
thinking about, yeah?
so much in my head.
Well,
Yeah.
thank you for the clarification. I got
Yeah.
it.
Yeah. So I have so many exciting stories to share, but most of them revolve around. No, I won't even go into that because it's going to be a big door.
Mm.
But a very exciting change that happened was also a client of mine, which is also written on my website, which one can read more about. But this client had been plagued by eating challenges, overeating for decades. And actually, IFS was invented as a way to deal with people with eating difficulties.
Really?
Yeah. And
Wow.
yeah, the people who were being treated by Dick Schwartz, the founder, he was actually working with something else, not IFS. But all of these clients were saying, like, there is a part of me that wants to eat. And
Yeah,
yeah, because it's
I
not
can
all
relate
of
so
me.
much to this.
Sorry?
I can relate so much to this. The little boy that wants to eat, to make grandma happy with him for eating, and making his dad proud for eating, making the kindergarten teachers proud for eating. Like, "You're such a good boy. You're eating so good."
Yeah. Oh, I have that as well. I'm from
Yeah,
Iranian and an Iraqi family,
yeah,
so
then you
say
know
no
about
more.
it. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. It's the worst. Loving culture, love is through food.
Yeah. And forcing the child to eat more than he wants.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
That's the
exactly.
love.
That's love.
Yeah, so that's how it was invented, that these people had a part that were drawn to eating. And so Dick Schwartz noticed that, there's something about parts here.
Yeah.
But anyway, this client had challenges for decades with overeating, especially sugar. And what we did was we noticed what part that is that's having this urge to overeat. And we noticed that this part is a protector. It wants to um, relive the nostalgic childhood experiences and basically feel better by eating. So we turned to that part for some time and heard that part, offered acceptance. It's okay that you have done this. It's completely fine that you've overeaten, and I understand that you did that. I get your incentive, so there's nothing wrong with you. And just that, when the shame dissolves, is a huge step. And then we just heard it, we just let it share, let it ventilate what it's worried would happen if it didn't eat. That's a very good question. Why are you doing this? What are you trying to do for me?
The question you said, what would happen if you don't eat?
Yeah, what are you afraid would happen if you don't eat?
Yeah,
Yeah,
interesting. Super
yeah.
interesting.
Because then usually there comes up fears around, oh, I'm afraid this is going to happen or this is going to happen. And that's what we call a trailhead. That's something that we can then follow. Where does that lead? So that's what that part was saying. And when that part could soften, we could also go to the part that it was protecting. This younger part, this nostalgic inner child. And we just went there. And instead of trying to recreate experiences by eating, as you were saying, in the outer world, we keep doing things in the outer world, focusing outside, eating, social media. Instead of that, we went into the part. The way out is in a way.
Mm.
And when we met that part, we saw, what do you need? What do you need that food is giving you? And it was really a feeling of comfort and safety. And there are so many different ways we can give that experiences to different parts, or any kind of experiences. But we just had the client step into the self and meet this part with safety, because self is safe. And just share the safety with the part. And we also let the part see life through the eyes of the self, which might sound a bit vague, but it's a really powerful practice, because the part can then see that through these glasses of the self, or more specifically, when I take off my glasses and see it really for what it is, then everything is safe. And after spending some sessions with that part, the eating completely stopped. And it was
Wow.
20 or 30
How?
sessions.
Yeah. So, what I hear is that do, do, do you see this as a common thread that food is often linked to safety?
Yeah, I would say so. It's linked with safety, and yeah, I would say not having to feel what's there,
Yeah.
but that too can be connected to safety,
Yeah,
because
exactly.
that could be scary to feel what's there, and it might be overwhelming. So I would
True.
say it boils down to safety in a lot of cases.
Yeah. Beautiful. And how is that person living life today?
He's offering IFS sessions as well.
Yeah.
So yeah, I
You got
recruited
that.
him.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah, and it's a close friend of mine. So yeah, that person is living life much better, and both giving and receiving IFS sessions.
Yeah. Beautiful. Thank you for sharing that story. And in in your opinion, what's the cost of not doing this kind of work on our relationships, on our purpose, or on our mental health? Like not specifically just like IFS, and you mentioned Zen coaching, meditation, breath work, men's circles. So what's the cost of not doing this inner work?
Mm. Yeah. So just to clarify, I don't see IFS as the one method for everyone. It puts a lot of it requires high level of abstract thinking and a lot of, not a lot of, but quite some presence to be able to get into the self, um, willingness to open up, and so on. So it's not for everyone. And I also had this client who said, there is a part in my throat. So she had some IFS language,
Mm.
but I don't want it. It's not me. I want it to be gone. And I tried to tell her that we could try to accept it and see what happens. She wasn't willing. So I just said, okay, well, this isn't for you then. So IFS isn't the one size fits all. But the cost of not doing something like IFS, where we investigate our inner landscape and offer compassion and acceptance to our parts, is that we try to change the environment so that it fits us. Because we're not okay with what we're feeling. If you say something, oh, it's going to be too much for me, so I need to change you, I need to manipulate you. That's something that I see a lot and very often, especially in close relationships. The cost is also, some people have a part that's afraid of opening up and afraid of contact. If that part gets to steer, then they're probably going to be lonely and isolated. So that's a big cost as well. Costs like anxiety, depression, all kinds of mental health issues come from this, from not fully accepting what's going on in me right now and needing to change it. That's why people drink, that's why they gamble, that's where OCD comes from, I feel so much anxiety, I need to check the stove. That's where, depression is like, I feel so low, and if I go out, it's gonna be scary. So I would rather sit at home, watch TV, and numb myself. Social media is also a quick way to change my emotions, all kinds of drugs. Like, I see that as the root cause of every mental health. Perhaps there are two or three that seem to be inherited from what I've read in my psychology studies, but
Yeah.
almost all of them are coming from that. The cost is also violence. Again, I need to act on this part instead of hold the part. The consequence is procrastination, not getting things done. The consequence is not taking care of your health. It's like trauma still being stuck in the body instead of being processed and being transformed. Just everything. It's really like the root that creates this huge tree with a lot of different branches. And it's the same root that's creating all of these different branches of problems.
Yeah, beautifully said. And now people have been listening to us for an hour and 21 minutes. People feeling something in their body. They're maybe feeling drawn, they're feeling pulled, they're feeling a wish to start exploring themselves or connect with you, Daniel. What is the best way to get in contact with you specifically here?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so the best way is to go into my website, ifswithdaniel.com, and there is a way to book a session if one wants to try. And there's also a contact form where one can just ask me questions if they're curious, and I'll get back to them within a few days. So I would say ifswithdaniel.com is the best way.
Yeah. And could you just like briefly give an idea of how a session would take part? So when people come, they are like, okay, I see the structure here, or
Mm-hmm.
I I know what I'm getting myself into.
Sure. Thanks for the question. Yeah. So the first step is to just I share a bit about IFS and how it can work, and I share that it's really the client who is in charge. So we don't go any faster than the client's parts are open to. And also, if I ask a question and the client doesn't want to answer that, we go the direction that the client wants. So we take it slowly and honor all the part's needs, and all of the client is welcome there. So I would start by saying some of these more practical things before inviting to a meditation to just get connected with the body and the parts. And after that, either we go with what's alive in the moment, which usually is something, or if the client has already some part that they're thinking about wanting to bring up, maybe a part that during the last weeks have been creating challenges for them. And once we find a part to work with, then we both just get curious about that part without trying to change or fix the part or push it away or belittle it or anything like that. And just see what does it want to do for you? How long has it been here? What's its role? Again, what's it afraid would happen if it didn't do what it's doing? Just really get curious, as if we're getting curious with a friend. Like, I'm getting curious on you when you're having challenges. I would just hear you and try to listen and try to understand instead of fixing. So having that approach to the part and meeting it from a place of self, offering it exactly what it needs. If that's love, if that's compassion, if that's a hand on the heart, if it's to hear some words of affirmation, like, I'm here with you now, and you're no longer alone, and you're so welcome to be as you are right now, here with us. And then we would just wrap it up with a short ritual of integration before finishing the session.
Yeah, beautiful. I was going to have that as my last question, but I also got curious about something else, and now I forgot what it was.
I love that we have so much to talk about. We could do this forever, I feel like.
Yeah, yeah, because like I'm trying just like to make my mind just like not go to like a billion different direction because this is like so interesting for me. But what I realize I want to thank you for the work that you're doing, and I want to thank you for being so generous with your insights and your ideas and sharing what IFS is and what you are doing specifically. And now I got the question came to mind now. So,
Awesome. All right.
and that is, what do people often express like spontaneously going through an IFS session? Do you see like a common thread of people like expressing something?
Okay. Yeah. There's often a resistance to feelings. That's a common thread. We notice a part, maybe a sad part, maybe an angry part. Okay, how do you feel towards that? I don't want it there. It's bothering me. It's annoying me. You know, that's very common. Also, it's common for people to say, well, I don't feel love for my parts and I can't step into the self. So
Mm.
that's another common thread.
So what I want to hear or what I want to know is what is like the common expression or the common thing they're saying when they are going through a breakthrough, when they are experiencing the effects, the positive effect of the coaching.
Okay, so what do they bring with them, kind of?
Yeah, like for example, if you're doing like hypnosis, maybe someone would say like, wow, I was totally whack, or I was totally out there in outer space, or people doing psychedelics. They're like, wow, I met God,
Right, I see, I
or something
see.
like that.
Okay, yeah, I got your question.
Yeah, yeah.
I would say the common thing is to say, I got in contact with uh, this self. How would I express that? How do they express that? I was God, or I realized that I am God,
Mm.
and I can do anything, and I just am love. Love is not something I'm doing or forcing or trying to create. It's just when all the parts can soften. Like, I notice in me now, actually, that in the beginning of this podcast, I was quite nervous. And now, when the parts are softening, this self comes up more. The love comes out more. So, this is something many people say, is that this magical, mystical, huge thing that can hold anything, that just feels compassion for anyone, for murderers and for everyone, and is relaxed and calm and centered. I noticed that not just I have that in me, but it is who I am at the core. And that's something that some people also bring into the world and bring into their days. Um, and I don't know if there's any bigger insight than that in any form of therapy. Because IFS isn't just a therapy, it's a lifestyle. So we bring the self out into our lives, and I see you as different parts. If you would be angry at me, I would see that it's not Morgan who's angry, it's a part of him. So it's really a way to filter and navigate life and people with a different framework, with a different set of glasses. And that shift in lifestyle is also something that clients can bring with them.
Yeah, like that is like completely, that is so powerful. Like
Yeah.
if more people could be in connection with themselves, feeling that I'm here, I'm love, I am this source. Holy shit, what a new world we would create. So thank you so much for for the work you're doing, Daniel.
Ah,
And if you want to connect with Daniel, I'm going to put all the links to Daniel in the show notes,
mm,
and make sure to check him out. And thank you so much for this beautiful interview.
mm,
And I must say, on a personal note, we haven't shared a lot of meanings, a lot of words. We met at Ängsbacka, but I just like saw you, something connected with you. I don't know what it is, but much love to you, brother.
mm,
And I hope to maybe like co-create something in the future for men specifically, because that is my new mission in life, and
mm.
that would be an honor. So, and thank you so much for showing up today,
Wow. Thank you so, so much,
bro.
brother.
Brother. Talk soon.
Yeah.